The paralyzed alien begged him to leave. He smiled and said, "No way." The planet was silent. A faint, greenish haze hung over jagged cliffs, and the wind carried a sharp, metallic scent that made Commander Kane wrinkle his nose. He had seen countless worlds in his years of exploring, but something about this one felt different, something ancient and forgotten. He landed his small exploration shuttle on a plateau, the engines kicking up clouds of silver dust. The craft settled with a soft thud, and Kane stepped out, his boots crunching over the strange, crystalline terrain. He scanned the horizon. Ruins sprawled in the distance, buildings that looked like they had been here for centuries, yet their designs were unlike anything he had ever seen. Towers twisted at impossible angles, and domes shimmered in the fading light like liquid metal. Kane tightened the straps on his pack and adjusted his visor. His mission was simple: survey the planet for signs of life or resources. But something about the air made him uneasy. His instincts, honed by years in the outer colonies, told him he was not alone. He moved toward the ruins cautiously, every step echoing in the empty landscape. As he approached, he saw a figure. At first, he thought it was a pile of rubble, a shadow among shadows. But as he got closer, he realized it was alive, or at least it had been. The figure was alien, twisted in pain, lying on its side beneath a broken beam. Its limbs were thin and frail, and its skin shimmered like glass, fractured and cracked. Kane froze for a moment. The alien looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. "Please," the alien rasped. Its voice was strange, melodic but broken, like a song with missing notes. You must leave now, please." Kane studied the creature. It was paralyzed, unable to move on its own. Its breathing was shallow, almost mechanical. Yet there was a spark in its eyes, a glimmer of life that refused to fade. "I can't just leave you here," Kane said. "You need help." The alien shivered. "No, you don't understand. Leaving now it is safest. For you, please go." Kane's lips curled into a small smile. "No way," he said, his tone calm but firm. He reached down and gently lifted the beam, trapping the alien. The creature made a low, frightened sound, almost like a growl, but it did not resist. As Kane helped the alien to its feet, he noticed strange markings on its skin. Glowing lines, almost like circuits, ran along its arms and neck. They pulsed faintly, as if alive. Kane had seen many forms of alien technology, but this seemed organic, part of the creature itself. "Who are you?" Kane asked, keeping his voice steady. The alien's eyes darted around nervously. "I was a strategist of the Atran Empire. My name is Cyril, but it doesn't matter." Kane frowned. "The Atran Empire? You're alive? I thought this sector was abandoned after the war." Cyril's lips trembled. "It was not abandoned. We hid, we survived, but they will come, and you cannot stop them. Leave." Kane studied him, weighing his options. The alien was clearly in pain, but it spoke as if it knew something he didn't. Kane's curiosity burned stronger than caution. "I can't just leave," he said again. "If they're coming, I might be able to help." Cyril's eyes widened in disbelief. "You humans, you cannot fight them. You don't understand their power. Please leave." Kane didn't respond immediately. He helped Cyril walk toward the shuttle, supporting him under the arms. The alien leaned heavily on him, shivering with every step. As they moved, Kane noticed signs of struggle around the ruins, scorched walls, deep gouges in the ground, and strange symbols etched into the stone. Whoever had attacked this place had been ruthless. "Who did this to you?" Kane asked quietly. Cyril's gaze fell to the ground. "They, my own empire, a betrayal I cannot explain fully, but they came for me, I escaped barely, and now they will return." Kane frowned. "Why are they after you?" Cyril shook his head weakly. "It is not your concern yet. Survive human, that is all that matters." Kane glanced at the horizon where dark clouds were gathering. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with tension. He had been in hostile situations before, but something about this felt different. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The alien was helpless, and the planet, so empty and desolate, hid dangers he could not yet see. As they reached the shuttle, Kane helped Cyril inside and secured him in the co-pilot seat. The alien's eyes darted around nervously, scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement outside. Kane could sense the fear radiating off him. "You're not leaving me, are you?" Cyril asked softly, almost whispering. "No," Kane replied simply. "I'm not leaving." The shuttle's engines hummed to life, the vibrations coursing through the cabin. Kane checked the controls, preparing for a quick takeoff. He glanced at Cyril, who was trembling, his thin fingers clutching the edge of the seat. "You have to understand," Cyril said, his voice strained. If they find you, if they find this place, everything dies. You cannot survive their fleet. Kane's smile remained calm, almost unnerving. We'll manage, I've faced worse. Cyril's eyes widened in disbelief. No, you don't understand. Their weapons, their ships, nothing survives, not even planets. You must leave. Kane's hand hovered over the throttle. He felt a strange thrill, part curiosity, part defiance. Humans were known for their stubbornness, for their refusal to back down, and he embodied that now. The shuttle lifted off, kicking up dust and debris as it rose into the sky. Kane kept his eyes on the horizon, scanning for movement. Cyril leaned back exhausted and let out a shaky breath. You humans, Cyril muttered. I have never seen one like you, brave, foolish, impossible, Kane chuckled softly. I get that a lot. They flew over the desolate planet, the ruins shrinking below them. Kane studied the landscape, noting patterns and structures. Something about the design of the ruins suggested intelligence beyond the Atran Empire. Advanced technology, yes, but also artistry, a civilization that had thrived and then collapsed. Cyril's breathing grew heavier, his eyelids drooping. Kane realized the alien was close to unconsciousness. He adjusted the shuttle's settings, keeping a steady course, though he knew they needed a place to land. Can you tell me more about them? Kane asked, his voice calm, encouraging. The ones who want you dead. Cyril's eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the dim light of the cockpit. They are not like anyone you know, efficient, ruthless, and unstoppable. They will destroy anything in their path to achieve their goals. I barely survived, and now, you human, you have made yourself part of this. Kane frowned, trying to process the alien's words. He had faced hostile species before, but the intensity of Cyril's fear was unlike anything he had seen. He tightened his grip on the controls, a surge of determination rising in him. We'll deal with them when the time comes, Kane said firmly. For now, just rest. We need your strength later. Cyril looked at him, a mix of fear and astonishment in his eyes. You truly are impossible. Kane smiled faintly, glancing out at the darkening sky. And you're lucky I don't give up easily. As the shuttle glided toward a valley that looked safe enough to land, Kane felt a strange energy pulse through the planet. The air grew heavy, charged with tension, and the faint hum of distant engines echoed in the distance. Cyril's body tensed and his eyes widened. They are coming, Cyril whispered. Kane didn't flinch. He knew the challenges ahead would be immense, but he had faced impossible odds before. Humans had a way of surviving when logic said they shouldn't. He would not turn away now. No matter what, Kane said softly, almost to himself, I'm not leaving, not now, not ever. The shuttle descended into the valley, dust swirling around them. The ruins below were silent, but Kane could feel the presence of something lurking, watching. He glanced at Cyril, whose body trembled but whose eyes burned with a fragile hope. Kane's smile remained. We'll see this through together. The alien tried to speak, but could only nod weakly. Kane's confidence, his sheer human stubbornness, seemed to calm the creature slightly. For the first time in years, Cyril felt a glimmer of trust. As the shuttle touched down, Kane opened the hatch. He stepped onto the crystalline surface, his boots crunching softly. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of metal and dust. He looked up at the horizon, dark clouds swirling, and felt the familiar thrill of the unknown. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. Humanity had survived against impossible odds before, and Kane intended to prove that even here, on a desolate world at the edge of known space, humans could not be underestimated. Cyril watched him, disbelief and admiration mixing in his gaze. Perhaps humans are more than I thought. Kane's smile widened and he helped the alien from the shuttle. Let's find out, he said. The valley seemed calm, but the stillness was deceptive. Kane had stepped out of the shuttle and looked at the horizon, where dark clouds swirled unnaturally. He felt it in his gut, the sense of danger growing stronger with each passing second. Cyril, the paralyzed alien he had rescued, leaned on him for support, shivering despite the relatively mild temperature. Kane scanned the ruins nearby. Cracked walls and broken towers stretched across the valley floor, remnants of a civilization that had once thrived here. He noticed patterns etched into the stone symbols that glowed faintly under the dim light. Those markings, Kane muttered, they're more than decoration, they're warnings. Cyril nodded weakly, his glass-like skin reflecting the strange light. Warnings, yes. Many died here, ignoring them, many. His voice was broken, full of pain and fear. He looked at Kane, a pleading expression on his face. "Do not ignore them." Kane crouched to study one of the symbols. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, and he felt an unusual energy in the air. "This planet wasn't just a settlement, it was a fortress," he said. "And someone or something is coming for you." Cyril's body tensed. "They will come soon, faster than you think." "Your human tricks may not work," Kane smiled faintly. "We'll see about that. Humans have a way of surviving when nothing else can." He helped Cyril move closer to a partially intact building. Its walls, though cracked, provided some cover from the open valley. Once inside, Kane set Cyril down on a raised platform, giving him as much comfort as the broken building could offer. He started examining the interior. The room was large, with walls lined in the same glowing symbols he had seen outside. There were remnants of furniture, broken tools, and a few metallic devices that seemed ancient yet functional. "These devices," Kane said aloud, "they might still work. Maybe we can use them to our advantage." Cyril's eyes widened slightly. "You want to use them. You are brave or foolish." "Maybe a little of both," Kane replied with a small smile. He ran his fingers over one of the devices. It was a console with glowing buttons etched with the same symbols. The panel flickered to life at his touch, displaying a holographic map of the planet and nearby sectors. He could see several points marked in red, ships perhaps, or other units approaching. Cyril gasped. "They are closer than I said. Faster." His voice trailed off, his fear evident. Kane focused on the map. "Looks like we don't have much time. We need to prepare." He looked around, scanning the room for anything he could use as a defense. "I'll improvise, don't worry." Cyril watched him with wide, fearful eyes. "Improvising, humans cannot survive like this." "You'd be surprised," Kane said calmly, already moving toward the door. He peeked outside. The valley was empty for now. But the air felt charged, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Kane returned inside and began experimenting with the ancient devices. Some lights flickered and hummed, responding to his touch. He didn't understand their full function yet, but intuition and experience guided him. "We'll need to lure them here," he muttered. "If they come in force, we can't outrun them, but we can use the terrain and these devices to level the playing field." Cyril shifted slightly, wincing. "Terrain, yes, humans think differently, clever, dangerous." He paused, breathing heavily. "But their ships, many, too many." Kane looked at him and nodded. "That's why we need traps and tactics. I've survived worse than this." The hours passed slowly. Kane moved between the devices, adjusting panels and levers, connecting strange circuits that glowed faintly. Cyril sat nearby, weak but alert, offering advice when he could. He described enemy strategies, fleet movements, and patterns that Kane could exploit. It was a strange partnership, human intuition meeting alien knowledge. By nightfall, the sky was dark, and stars glimmered above the jagged cliffs. The valley below seemed quiet, but Kane could feel a tension in the air. He stood by a high window of the broken building, scanning the horizon. Then he saw it, tiny glimmers of light in the distance, moving toward the planet. Cyril gasped. "They arrive now." Kane tightened his grip on the railing. "Good, then it's time to test our plan." He explained to Cyril his strategy. Using the devices inside the building, he could activate traps, energy fields that could disable ships, trigger collapses in the valley, and create confusion among the approaching fleet. The alien listened, amazed at Kane's ingenuity. "You humans think differently, unpredictable, dangerous," Cyril said, a hint of awe in his voice. Kane smiled faintly. "That's why we survive when nothing else does." As the first ships entered orbit, Kane's preparations began. Energy pulses flashed across the valley, hidden panels opened to reveal concealed turrets, and the ancient devices hummed with renewed power. The ships seemed momentarily confused, their scanners unable to adjust to the sudden changes. Cyril watched in disbelief. "Impossible, no, human." Kane crouched near one of the consoles, adjusting settings. "Just keep calm and give me info. I need to know their numbers, their positions, and any weaknesses you see." Cyril's glowing eyes scanned the map, reporting movements of the enemy. Kane adapted quickly, rerouting energy, activating traps in sequence, and predicting their tactics before they could act. It was chaos, but controlled chaos, guided by Kane's ingenuity. The first ship approached the valley, descending rapidly. Kane activated a trap, and an energy net fired from the cliffs, wrapping around the ship and forcing it to stall. Another ship tried to flank from the side, but the terrain Kane had studied earlier funneled it into a narrow pass, where he triggered another trap that disabled its engines. Cyril's eyes widened. You are extraordinary, Kane nodded. Thanks. Just doing what humans do best, think on our feet. More ships approached, but Kane stayed calm. He adjusted the devices, setting a rhythm to their traps, creating zones of confusion, and using the planet's natural features to his advantage. Energy pulses, collapsing cliffs, and malfunctioning enemy systems gave them small victories. Yet Kane knew this was only the beginning. The fleet was massive, and their initial losses would only make them more dangerous. He needed more than just traps, he needed strategy, and he needed courage. Cyril, despite his weakness, moved closer to Kane. I never imagined a human could do this alone. We may survive thanks to you. Kane looked at him. We're in this together. You've helped more than you realize. Hours passed. The battle for the valley continued. Kane's traps slowed the fleet but didn't stop it. He realized they couldn't hold indefinitely. He needed to lure the enemy into a final, decisive trap, a place where the terrain and the devices could work together to give humans a fighting chance. He led Cyril deeper into the ruins, to a central chamber where energy lines converged. This would be the core of their defense. Kane set up devices to amplify energy fields, create barriers, and disorient the enemy. Cyril assisted as best he could, giving precise instructions and warnings. Their commander will arrive soon, Cyril warned. He is clever and ruthless. You cannot underestimate him. Kane nodded. I never do. As they waited, Kane studied the enemy patterns on the holographic map. Every move they made was predictable in some way, yet their sheer numbers were terrifying. He adjusted his traps, anticipating their responses, and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Hours passed, and the first rays of dawn began to break across the valley. The fleet had suffered losses but was regrouping. Kane and Cyril watched as the enemy commander's ship descended slowly, massive and imposing. Cyril gasped. That is him, the one I feared most, the real weapon, human, not just ships. Kane's eyes narrowed. Good, then we know our target. We'll deal with him last. The enemy commander's ship hovered above the central chamber, scanning the area. Kane activated the final sequence of traps. Energy barriers rose, concealed turrets whirred to life, and the ancient devices pulsed with immense power. Cyril looked at Kane, his fear replaced by a glimmer of hope. You humans are impossible, Kane smiled faintly. And that's why we survive. The stage was set. The enemy fleet had entered their trap, and Kane was ready. He didn't know what the coming battle would bring, but he had faith in human ingenuity, courage, and determination. Cyril, weak but alert, watched Kane with newfound respect. For the first time in years, he believed they might survive. Kane glanced at him and nodded. Stay close, we're not done yet. The enemy fleet moved closer, unaware of the traps lying in wait. Kane tightened his grip on the controls, ready for whatever came next. And in that moment, the valley, the ancient ruins, and the human spirit prepared for a confrontation that would change everything. The valley below was alive with movement. Kane stood on the raised platform in the central chamber, watching as the enemy fleet descended into the trap he had prepared. Energy barriers hummed along the cliffs, turrets hidden among the ruins whirred to life, and pulses of ancient technology flickered across the walls. The first ships had already been disabled, their engines sparking, while others tried to navigate the narrow passes Kane had designed. Cyril leaned against the wall, weak but alert, his glass-like skin reflecting the flickering lights. You humans are clever beyond reason, he whispered. His eyes followed the enemy ships as they moved with increasing caution. But the commander, he is different, dangerous. You cannot underestimate him. Kane nodded, his eyes sharp and focused. I don't underestimate anyone. We'll see how clever he really is. He adjusted a panel on the central console, redirecting energy to reinforce the traps along the valley. These ships may be advanced, but they rely on patterns. I'm going to disrupt those patterns and will force them into mistakes. Cyril studied the map projected from the console. Red dots moved methodically across the terrain, representing the approaching fleet. They are faster than expected, my calculations underestimated. Kane ran his fingers along the holographic display. Then we adjust. He tapped a sequence on the console, sending pulses of energy to hidden panels across the valley. Suddenly, sections of the cliffs shifted, rocks collapsing to block passages. Energy nets rose from concealed trenches, wrapping around approaching ships and causing confusion among the enemy pilots. Cyril gasped. Impossible, humans unpredictable, dangerous. His voice, though weak, carried awe. Kane smiled faintly. That's the idea. The enemy commander's ship descended last, massive and imposing. It hovered above the central chamber, scanning the terrain with sophisticated sensors. Kane felt the tension rise. This was the real test. The traps had slowed the fleet, but the commander was not a fool. He would recognize the patterns and adapt quickly. "Commander Kane," Cyril whispered, his voice trembling slightly, "he knows strategy unlike the others. You must think faster than ever before." Kane tightened his grip on the console. "I've faced worse odds. Let's see what humans can do." The commander's ship emitted a pulse, and Kane immediately recognized it as a scanning signal. Energy from the shields along the cliffs flared, absorbing and redirecting the pulse harmlessly into the valley floor. Kane's quick adjustments ensured the traps remained hidden and the enemy ships could not detect their true positions. Cyril looked at him in amazement. "How you think so fast, humans, incredible." Kane ignored the praise. Focus was all that mattered. He observed the fleet's movements carefully, noting the commander's attempts to outmaneuver the traps. He predicted the patterns, adjusting the energy fields, opening new channels, and causing the fleet to stumble into zones of disorientation. Ships spun out of control, their engines overloaded by the sudden energy surges. "Keep going," Cyril urged. "Do not let him learn." Kane's eyes narrowed. He tapped another sequence on the console. Hidden turrets activated, firing precision energy beams that disabled critical parts of the enemy ships. The commander's fleet faltered, their movements growing chaotic. Yet Kane knew the commander would soon respond with something unexpected. "Now," Kane said quietly. He activated a series of traps designed to draw the commander's ship closer to the central chamber. The energy lines pulsed brightly, guiding the ship into a narrow canyon where Kane had planned the final phase of his defense. Cyril gasped. "No, that is dangerous, even for you." Kane didn't reply. His focus was absolute. Every calculation, every pulse of energy, every movement of the terrain had been designed to give them an advantage. This was the culmination of hours of preparation, improvisation, and human intuition. The commander's ship entered the canyon. Kane watched as it triggered the first set of traps. Energy nets ensnared the outer wings, forcing the ship to slow down. Hidden turrets fired, striking critical points, causing sparks and minor explosions along its hull. The commander's ship was massive, but Kane's plan exploited its size and rigidity. Cyril leaned closer, his fear mingled with admiration. "You humans are unstoppable, impossible. I never imagined." Kane glanced at him briefly. "We adapt. That's what makes us dangerous." The enemy commander adjusted, trying to escape the canyon, but Kane anticipated the move. He redirected energy to collapse a section of the canyon walls, forcing the ship to slow further. Sparks flew as parts of the hull scraped against falling rocks, and the commander's crew struggled to maintain control. "Almost there," Kane muttered. He activated the final trap, a powerful energy field designed to disable the ship entirely. The beams converged in the canyon, creating a cage of light and force. The commander's ship was caught, its movements restricted, its systems disrupted. Cyril's eyes widened in disbelief. "You actually did it, human. You truly are extraordinary." Kane didn't celebrate yet. He knew the commander was clever, and survival depended on the next move. He adjusted the energy pulses to keep the ship restrained while preparing a way to board it. "You will try to board," Cyril predicted, his voice filled with awe. "You, humans, always take risks." Kane smiled faintly. "It's what we do best." He activated a docking sequence on the shuttle, extending a secure tether toward the disabled commander's ship. Sparks flew as he maneuvered carefully, attaching the shuttle to the hull. Cyril watched, unable to move but following every detail with his glowing eyes. "Be careful," Cyril warned. "He is not like the others. Do not underestimate him." Kane nodded. He drew his standard-issue multi-tool and opened the hatch, stepping onto the ship's surface. The enemy crew tried to react, but their movements were slow, disrupted by Kane's traps. He moved quickly, using the environment to his advantage, disabling energy panels and rerouting power. Inside the ship, the corridors were dark and metallic, humming with residual energy. Kane could feel the presence of the commander. The air seemed charged, tense, like the ship itself was aware of him. He followed the faint glow from the command center and found the commander waiting. The alien was massive, armored, and imposing, with eyes that seemed to pierce Kane's very thoughts. "So," the commander said, his voice deep and mechanical, "the human believes it can challenge me." Kane stepped forward, calm and steady. "I don't just believe it, I know it." The commander laughed, a sound that echoed through the metallic halls. "You are bold, foolish, and stubborn. I admire that, but it will not save you." Kane's mind raced. He studied the commander's movements, noting patterns in his stance and energy output. Humans had a way of observing and predicting behavior that few species could match. Kane adjusted his tactics, using the ship's own systems against the commander. With a swift motion, Kane triggered a localized energy surge in the command center. Lights flickered, systems stuttered, and the commander's armor shivered under the pressure. Kane moved closer, careful but relentless. "You think you can win?" the commander asked, his voice tense. Kane smiled. "I don't think, I adapt." He activated another system, redirecting energy to disable the commander's primary weapons. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the massive alien froze, momentarily stunned. Kane took advantage, using the shuttle's tether to secure a critical panel. The ship shuddered as its systems were overridden. Cyril, watching through the shuttle's connection, whispered, "You humans cannot be predicted, impossible, truly." Kane focused. The commander struggled, trying to regain control, but Kane anticipated every move. With precise adjustments, he disabled the final energy barrier, securing victory without unnecessary force. The commander slumped, restrained but unharmed, his massive form contained by Kane's ingenuity. Kane exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. The fleet outside had seen their leader disabled, and the remaining ships faltered. Kane had turned the tide, not with brute force, but with strategy, courage, and quick thinking. Cyril floated closer, weak but filled with awe. "You have saved us, human, I cannot believe." Kane helped him sit up. "We're not done yet, but this is a start." The commander looked at Kane, recognition in his eyes. "You are not like any human I've encountered, clever, daring, unstoppable, perhaps worthy." Kane smiled faintly. "I told you. Humans survive when nothing else can. We adapt, we endure, and we never back down." The commander nodded slowly, a mixture of respect and wariness in his gaze. "Perhaps we underestimated your kind." Kane returned to the shuttle, helping Cyril aboard. Outside, the fleet hesitated, unsure of what to do next. Kane knew the fight was far from over, but he had proved something vital. Human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability could turn the impossible into survival. Cyril looked at him with glowing eyes filled with new hope. "You humans may be more than I thought." Kane smiled faintly, adjusting the shuttle controls. "And this is just the beginning." The valley was silent once more, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Kane had faced the enemy commander and held his ground. Humanity had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they were resourceful, fearless, and unstoppable. The valley was quiet now, but the stillness was tense. Kane had returned to the central chamber with Cyril, the paralyzed alien whose knowledge had been invaluable. Outside, the remnants of the fleet hovered uncertainly, their commander restrained and their formations disrupted. Kane knew this was only a temporary victory. The enemy's real strength had yet to reveal itself. Cyril floated slightly, still weak, but his eyes glowed brighter than before. "You, human, have done the impossible against him, but the fleet, they are many much more than you imagine." Kane nodded, running his hand over the console. "I know. The commander was just one piece. We've slowed them, but the rest are still a threat. We need a plan, something they won't expect." Cyril studied the map of the valley and surrounding sectors. "They will not attack blindly, but their patterns predictable in some ways. Humans can exploit this." Kane smiled faintly. "That's the plan. We take what we learned from the commander and use it against the fleet. We turn their strength into weakness." He moved among the ancient devices, adjusting panels, rerouting energy, and activating hidden defenses. Cyril floated close, guiding him, his knowledge of the enemy's tactics proving invaluable. "Their ships rely on formation coordination. If broken, they falter. Humans understand." Kane nodded, setting up traps and energy fields designed to force the fleet into confusion. He created narrow channels, false openings, and energy pulses that mimicked movement, drawing the ships toward specific zones in the valley. "We'll lead them where we want them." Kane explained. Then we hit hard and fast. Cyril's glowing eyes followed his every move. You humans think differently, your mind unpredictable, dangerous, I admire, Kane shrugged. It's what we do, we survive when nothing else does. As night fell, the enemy fleet began to move. Kane watched through the observation panels as dozens of ships descended toward the valley. Their sensors tried to detect the traps, but Kane's careful adjustments masked their presence. Energy barriers shimmered faintly in hidden places, waiting for the right moment to activate. Cyril tensed. They sense something cautious moving carefully. Kane studied the fleet's formation. Good, that means they're aware, but they're still following predictable paths. We use that. We force them into mistakes one by one. The first wave of ships entered the valley. Kane triggered hidden turrets and energy nets. Several ships were caught, their engines overloaded and their systems disrupted. The remaining vessels faltered, unsure of where to go next. Kane adjusted the energy fields in real time, guiding them into the next trap. Cyril watched in amazement. You humans are beyond comprehension, even I cannot. Kane ignored the praise. Focus was all that mattered. He studied the map, noting the movement of each ship. The fleet commander, restrained but observing, glared at him through the monitors. Kane felt a thrill. This was the test of human ingenuity, and he intended to pass it. The second wave approached. Kane activated a series of energy pulses that caused the ship's sensors to misread the terrain. They swerved, colliding with hidden obstacles, and several ships were forced to retreat. Kane moved quickly, adjusting traps and amplifying energy fields to maximize confusion. Cyril floated closer, his voice filled with awe. They are faltering. Humans adapt faster than anyone I thought. Kane nodded. That's what humans do. We adapt, we improvise, and we survive. The enemy commander growled, restrained but clearly frustrated. You human are clever, but the fleet is not defeated yet. Kane's eyes narrowed. Then we finish this quickly and efficiently. He studied the remaining ships. They were fewer now, but stronger, more coordinated. Kane realized the key to victory was to separate them, isolate them, and prevent them from working as a unit. He activated a series of energy barriers that divided the valley into sections, funneling the ships into narrow passages where traps awaited. Cyril watched, his glowing eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and admiration. You humans create order from chaos. Impossible, Kane smiled faintly. That's what we do. The first isolated ship entered the trap. Energy nets ensnared it, disabling its engines. Turrets fired with precision, striking critical systems. The ship struggled, its movements erratic, until it was completely immobilized. Kane moved quickly, rerouting energy to the next section of the valley. Cyril gasped. You humans are unstoppable. I cannot believe. The second ship approached, but Kane was ready. He triggered an energy pulse that caused its sensors to fail. The ship spun uncontrollably, colliding with the canyon walls. Sparks flew, and Kane adjusted the energy fields to ensure it could not escape. Cyril's admiration grew. Your mind is incredible, human. Even I underestimated. Kane didn't respond. His focus was absolute. He studied the map, noting the movements of the remaining ships. Each trap was precise, each energy pulse calculated. The fleet was faltering, and Kane could sense their frustration. The commander's ship, still restrained, observed everything. Kane knew it would try something desperate. He prepared for it, adjusting energy fields and traps to counter any sudden movements. Cyril warned him he will act unpredictable. Be ready. Kane nodded. I've anticipated that. The commander's ship activated a powerful energy pulse, attempting to disable the traps. Kane reacted immediately, redirecting energy to absorb the pulse and strengthen the barriers. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but the traps held. Cyril's eyes widened. Impossible. Humans anticipate everything. Extraordinary. Kane smiled faintly. That's what makes us dangerous. The remaining ships hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. Kane used the moment to activate the final trap, a massive energy cage that could immobilize multiple ships at once. Energy beams converged, forming a glowing grid across the valley. The fleet was caught, their movements restricted, their systems disrupted. Cyril floated closer, awe in his gaze. You humans create hope even in impossible situations, Kane nodded. We survive when nothing else can. That's human nature. The commander struggled within the energy cage, his massive form restrained. Kane approached cautiously, using the shuttle's tether to monitor the situation. He didn't need to fight with force. The traps and energy fields had already given them the advantage. Cyril watched, his voice trembling slightly. "You, human, have turned despair into victory incredible." Kane adjusted the energy fields, ensuring the commander and the remaining fleet were fully immobilized. The valley was quiet once more, the only sounds coming from the hum of the ancient devices. Kane turned to Cyril. "We've slowed them, but we can't let them regroup. We need to act next, secure the planet and prevent future attacks." Cyril nodded weakly, his glowing eyes reflecting admiration and relief. "You humans are beyond imagination. I never believed." Kane smiled faintly. "Believe it now. Humans survive when nothing else can. We adapt, we endure, and we never back down." The valley was quiet, the enemy fleet restrained and defeated for now. Kane had turned impossible odds into victory through ingenuity, courage, and quick thinking. Cyril floated closer, his voice filled with awe. "You human may be the key to survival in this galaxy." Kane looked at him, determination in his eyes. "And this is just the beginning. We'll make sure they never underestimate humans again." The sun rose over the valley, casting light on the ancient ruins and the immobilized fleet. Kane had proven that even in the face of overwhelming power, human ingenuity, adaptability, and courage could prevail. Cyril, still weak but filled with hope, floated beside him. "Perhaps humans are more than I thought," Kane smiled faintly. "And now they'll know it." The valley, the ruins, and the human spirit had survived. The enemy fleet had been humbled, and humanity had shown that no challenge was too great when met with courage and cleverness. And somewhere, deep in the stars, the rest of the galaxy would remember the human who refused to back down, and the alien who realized that humans were unlike any species he had ever known. The valley was quiet, but the silence was tense. Kane stood on the raised platform of the central chamber, the immobilized fleet below him, and Cyril by his side. The enemy commander, restrained but still formidable, glared at him with narrowed eyes. Kane knew that while the fleet had been stopped, the battle was not yet over. The Atran Empire had other forces, other weapons, and a final contingency that had yet to reveal itself. Cyril floated weakly beside him, his glass-like skin faintly pulsing with light. "You human have done the impossible, but the real threat is not yet here. I feared her." Kane's brow furrowed. "Her," Cyril nodded, his voice trembling. "The weapon she was created by the Empire to destroy any planet that resists. She is coming now." Kane's grip tightened on the console. He had anticipated many challenges, but a bioengineered weapon capable of wiping out a planet was something else entirely. "Then we prepare. Humans never back down, even against impossible odds." Cyril's eyes widened. "You truly are impossible, human. I never believed." Kane smiled faintly. "Believe it now. We adapt, we survive, and we fight." Outside, the horizon darkened. A massive shadow moved across the valley as a colossal shape descended from the sky. The air trembled, and the ground shook with each step of the approaching weapon. Kane watched as the immense figure revealed itself, a towering bioengineered entity, its limbs bristling with energy conduits and armor that seemed almost organic. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, scanning the valley for targets. Cyril gasped. "She is unstoppable. You cannot fight like before." Kane adjusted the controls of the ancient devices. "We won't fight like before. We'll fight smarter. Humans survive when they think differently, and this is our advantage." The bioengineered weapon moved slowly but deliberately, its massive form crushing the valley floor with each step. Kane observed the patterns in its movement, noting the pauses between attacks, the way it scanned for energy sources, and the limitations in its range. Humans had survived against impossible odds before, and he intended to do it again. Cyril floated closer, fear evident in his glowing eyes. "You truly risk everything, human. I never imagined." Kane nodded. "It's what humans do. We take risks to survive." He activated a series of energy pulses from the central chamber. Hidden panels opened, revealing turrets and channels that focused energy at precise points. Kane had studied the weapon's movements and predicted where its vulnerabilities would be. The plan was risky, but Kane thrived on the impossible. The bioengineered weapon raised a massive arm, sweeping across the valley, smashing debris and scattering the remaining enemy ships. Kane activated the first sequence of traps. Energy nets shot out, wrapping around the weapon's legs, slowing its advance. Sparks flew as it struggled against the unexpected restraint. Cyril gasped. Incredible humans can turn even this into opportunity. Kane adjusted the energy pulses, directing them at weak points in the weapon's armor. Small sparks of damage appeared, proving his calculations were correct. "It's not invincible," he muttered. "We just have to exploit what it cannot protect." The weapon roared, a sound that shook the valley, and began to adapt, directing energy toward the traps. Kane quickly adjusted the devices, creating diversions and false signals. The weapon followed the wrong path, and its massive form collided with a concealed barrier, stumbling slightly. Kane seized the moment, activating hidden turrets that struck critical points in its armor. Cyril watched, all mixing with relief. "You humans are beyond comprehension impossible." Kane didn't respond. Focus was all that mattered. He studied the weapon's movements, predicting its attacks and exploiting its weaknesses with precision. Each strike he orchestrated, each diversion he created, was designed to conserve energy while maximizing impact. The weapon roared again, this time swinging a massive arm toward the central chamber. Kane activated a secondary energy shield, absorbing the impact. Sparks flew and the ground shook, but the chamber held. Kane gritted his teeth, knowing that every second counted. Cyril whispered, "She is strong, even so, your human's mind is stronger." Kane adjusted a series of levers and panels. He activated a sequence designed to overload the weapon's power conduits. Energy beams converged on its core, causing sparks and brief malfunctions. The weapon staggered, its movement slowed by the precise attacks. Kane had created a rhythm, a sequence of strikes and feints, exploiting the weapon's predictable responses. The weapon's eyes glowed brighter, scanning for the source of the disruptions. Kane used the ancient devices to project false energy signatures, drawing its attention away from the central chamber. The weapon shifted, leaving weak points exposed. Kane activated the final trap, a powerful energy net designed to immobilize the weapon completely. The beams shot out, wrapping around the bioengineered giant. The weapon roared in frustration, thrashing against the restraints, but Kane had calculated every move. The energy net tightened, holding the weapon in place, its massive form restrained. Cyril floated closer, his voice filled with awe. "You humans create order from chaos, truly extraordinary," Kane smiled faintly. "That's what we do. Humans survive when nothing else can." He didn't stop there. Using the shuttle's tether and the ancient devices, Kane redirected energy to strike the weapon's core at precise intervals, weakening its power systems further. Sparks flew, and the massive entity shuddered, struggling against the relentless assault. Cyril whispered, "You human may be the greatest strategist I have known." Kane focused, adjusting energy flows and traps with precision. The weapon roared, its attempts to break free growing desperate, but Kane's combination of human ingenuity, quick thinking, and careful observation kept it restrained. Finally, Kane activated the last sequence, a concentrated pulse of energy directly at the weapon's core. The impact caused a massive explosion of light and energy, but Kane had prepared the chamber to absorb the shock. When the light faded, the weapon lay motionless, fully immobilized, its systems offline. Cyril gasped, disbelief and relief evident in his glowing eyes. "You humans have defeated her impossible extraordinary." Kane exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. The valley was quiet now, the enemy fleet immobilized and the bioengineered weapon defeated. Humanity had survived against an impossible threat, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, courage, and the ability to adapt. Cyril floated closer, his body trembling with emotion. "You human have changed everything. The Empire will never underestimate your kind again." Kane nodded, helping Cyril to the shuttle. "We've done our part, now we make sure they never threaten this planet again." Outside, the valley basked in the first light of dawn. The ruins, once silent and desolate, now held a sense of triumph. Kane had proven that even in the face of overwhelming power, humans could turn the impossible into victory. Cyril looked at him with admiration and respect. "Perhaps humans are more than I thought, more than any could imagine," Kane smiled faintly. "And now they'll remember, humanity survives, we endure, we adapt, we fight when it matters most." The commander, restrained but alive, looked at Kane with a mixture of respect and wariness. "You, human, are unlike any I have faced, clever, daring, unstoppable." Kane nodded. That's humans. We survive when nothing else can, and we never back down. The enemy fleet, immobilized and leaderless, had no choice but to retreat. Kane monitored their movements, ensuring they could not regroup or launch another attack. Cyril, still weak but alive, floated beside him, watching the retreating ships disappear into the horizon. "Thank you, human, for everything," Cyril whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. Kane shook his head. "We did it together. Your knowledge helped, my skills helped, but it was our combined effort that won this day." Cyril smiled faintly. "You have shown me humans are beyond anything we imagined." Kane looked out over the valley, the ruins, and the immobilized fleet. "And that's only the beginning. There are countless challenges ahead, but humanity will face them and survive." The sun rose higher, casting light over the ancient structures and the quiet valley. Kane had faced the impossible, and humanity had triumphed. Through courage, cleverness, and the refusal to give up, they had turned despair into hope and danger into victory. Cyril floated beside Kane, a silent witness to the humans' remarkable feat. "You, human, may be the key to the galaxy's survival," Kane smiled faintly. "We all have a part to play. Humans, aliens, allies, together we endure, together we thrive." As Kane prepared the shuttle for departure, he looked back at the valley one last time. The ruins, the fleet, and the defeated weapons stood as proof of what could be achieved when courage, ingenuity, and determination were combined. Humanity had survived, and in doing so had changed the course of the galaxy. Cyril's voice, though weak, carried admiration. "You, humans, are impossible, extraordinary, unstoppable," Kane nodded. "And that's why we survive. No matter what comes next, we adapt, we endure, and we fight when it matters most. That's humanity." The shuttle lifted off, carrying Kane and Cyril away from the valley. Below them, the Atran Empire's remnants remained, but the message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated. Kane had shown the galaxy that even against impossible odds, humanity's courage, adaptability, and ingenuity could turn the tide. Cyril looked at Kane, glowing eyes filled with respect and newfound hope. "Perhaps humans are more than I ever imagined." Kane smiled faintly, watching the valley fade beneath them. "And now the galaxy will know it." The stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibility. Humanity had survived another impossible challenge, leaving its mark on the galaxy forever.